Sports don't usually kill you. Sure, there are sports such as boxing, rugby, football, and different types of martial arts, but people don't usually expect to die when going into those. Mountain climbing, however, is a completely different story, and that's what The Climber is centered around. It's a coming-of-age story about a teenager who learns to lead a life while, for the most part, being alone. He gets introduced to climbing after joining a new school and pretty much being roped into it by one of the students. Luckily for him, climbing is something that you can do alone without people. Because this guy, Mori Buntaro, he isolates himself a lot from the people around him. Mainly because he seems to feel most comfortable when being alone. It's shown that he ran into some problems in his past that involved a very negative side of people, which kind of pushes him into this very solitary life where he never really reaches out to people and tries connecting in any meaningful way. He comes across friendship and intimacy, and this story is about how Mori learns to live with that, navigate it, and also a very big thing, which is climbing. He completely falls in love with it, and he throws everything he has into it, pretty much. Stepping back from this for a sec, I like basketball. It's a fun sport, although I'm not very good at it, sadly. But for anyone who likes sports, or really anyone who's been passionate about something, maybe you can relate wanting to invest a lot of your time into becoming better at the thing you like. Practice, practice, practice. It can really just be so fun throwing yourself at something again and again and just becoming completely obsessed with this one thing. And in the story, this is exactly what Mori does with climbing. And because he's a loner who doesn't really like spending time with people, he cuts everything out of his life that doesn't have to do with climbing, especially once he decides on one super big ultimate goal, which is deciding to climb the most dangerous mountain in the world, K2. He drops out of high school, goes to work at some company to make money and save up to go climb this mountain. He even lives in some crappy apartment alone with no furniture and really nothing to his name. Even at his job, it seems the only thing that's on his mind is climbing. Mori seems to be so sure of himself that he wants absolutely nothing to do with people, but there are times in the story and in this guy's life where he is with people. And I love seeing those moments because there are times when you can see Mori looks really out of his element. But probably one of the things that really interested me the most in this story is when he comes across people that he loves or is actually able to feel comfortable with. I think one of the earliest ones is this guy he meets, the guy who introduces him to climbing, Miyamoto. And although their friendship turns pretty dark later in the story, it's one of the first relationships between the characters in the story that really just gives you a look at how alone Mori is. There's another time in the story where Mori actually has to team up with some climbers to do a practice run for K2. And while you see him doing this with some pretty much complete strangers, you get to see how conflicted this guy is about being around people. The Climber feels very personal, and it feels like we are constantly inside of Mori's head. For me, it gets kind of philosophical, and at some points, I started to ask myself, what would it be like to be alone and live a life like Mori? Can you even live a life like that? I definitely couldn't, but it was something that I feel like the Climber was trying to ask, and I think it definitely answers that question throughout the story. My favorite part of the Climber is pretty much the whole story, the way Buntaro finds out how to live his life, even if it's somewhat different from the norm, really different from the norm. Honestly, I've seen a few seinen manga where the big theme is to find peace with yourself, and I've come to learn that I really like that type of story. And in The Climber, Mori Buntaro's only way of achieving that is throughout the majority of the story, single-mindedly trying to achieve his goals of climbing the highest mountain in the world. Most people don't live the same lifestyle that Mori lives. We don't spend our days training to climb an 8,000 meter tall mountain. But I do feel that most of us can relate to trying to learn how to live our own life while dealing with the ups and downs that come with it. And the way the Climber is able to show this is just what makes it a masterpiece. It's really just a beautiful story in general. Also, something I haven't even mentioned a single time, the artist who made this, Shinichi Sakamoto. When you talk about some of the best artists in manga, he is definitely one of those names that pops into my head. Because, I mean, throughout this video, you've seen a whole bunch of his artwork, and it's amazing. The Climber definitely has some of the best artwork I've ever seen in manga, and it really just adds into making it such such a beautiful story. I wouldn't mind reading this just for the art alone because, I mean, the art's just that great. Now, something that caught my attention after I got done reading The Climber was actually the afterword by the artist. And in this afterword, I found out that this manga was actually based off of a real person named Kato Buntaro. And when I say based off of this guy, it's very, very, very loosely based off him. Kato Buntaro, he was born in like 1905, died in like 1930 something. And although I did kind of try to look into this guy, the best thing I was able to find was one blog website that kind of summarizes a piece of this guy's writings. So I really couldn't find a lot. But on this website, on this little blog, it talks about Kato's view on why people would want to go solo while climbing. And what I get from what Kato writes is that there's something like a purity in mountain climbing and stuff. And when you are solo, things are just, that much more pure. And he also considers that mountain climbing is like a contest against nature that's intense enough as it is, but even more so when you go at it alone. He has an interesting philosophy when it comes to climbing mountains. Unfortunately, Kato did die when he was 31 years old while climbing a mountain called Mount Yari in the dead of winter. And as far as it comes to climbing K2, that super difficult mountain, I couldn't find anything where it says the real life Buntaro tried to do the same thing. So yeah, a little bit of history. If there's anything you got out of this video, I hope you at least got some random knowledge about climbing, or about this Kato Buntaro. But yeah, The Climber, one of the greatest stories I've ever read. Quick little side thing I want to mention is I found this pretty awesome documentary by Eddie Bauer of climbing K2. Pretty good, and if you're interested at all, with anything in this video about mountain climbing, I'd suggest go watching it because it's just that great. And it really just gives you a look at how dangerous this mountain is. Anyways, thanks for watching. See you in the next one, and peace.